Hey there, welcome to the Breakthrough Creative. I'm your host, John McDavitt. This is where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. And today's episode, well, I guess before I get into that, I really want to ask you, would you please subscribe? There's a little red button below if you're watching on video. And if you're listening on the podcast, if you'd subscribe to Apple Podcasts, that is really helpful. And if you haven't left a review yet on Apple Podcasts and you wouldn't mind leaving me a favorable review, and 5 stars, I think, is what it takes to really get it to kick in. If you don't like the show and you don't want to leave a review, that's okay. You can just pass on by, but thank you nonetheless. So, I was thinking to myself about the things that I want to do yet in my career, about the places I would like to grow my business, and I was weighing the battle, the energy that takes, the forces that you go up against. And I mean the forces that they are things like time and energy and resources, right? That's really what I'm looking at, and so I have to weigh the cost as I'm planning new things. And it's funny, today the weather's changing here. We had a really hot day a couple of days ago. It's getting cold again. We got this front coming in. I had a lot of work to do today, and I've just had this headache. And honestly, if I wasn't disciplined, if I didn't care about my clients, if I just wanted to rest, I'd probably be up laying in bed right now. And, woe is me, right? First world problems, not a big deal, but things have to get done. I have responsibilities. I have projects and people that I am accountable to, and so I'm going to get the work done. But, I was thinking to myself, what has allowed me to build my business like I have? And I was thinking about the guests I've had. What has allowed them to build their businesses as far as they have? And allowed is a weird word. I don't know that that's the right word. I think the right word is earned, the stuff that they've earned to get so far. I think that we can have happenstance and happy accidents that, to quote Bob Ross, I guess, happy accidents that will, it's like tripping over a stone on the ground and you realize, oh boy, there's gold here. That's gold sticking out of the ground, and you dig at it, right? But you still have to earn it. You've got to dig at it. You got to dig this big piece of gold out of the ground. You don't know how big it is. It might be nothing. It might be fool's gold. Who knows? But you have to pay attention and you have to do work, even if you luck into things. But most of the time, it's more than luck. Most of the time, you are you face resistance, things that push against you to the point where either it makes it difficult, or you've got a headache for the day, right? Or to the point where maybe you want to quit. You've got voices in your head from the past, people saying, you're no good at this, or you're a poser, or maybe it's your own voice. We all have this judge who lives inside of us, right? So, I was thinking to myself today as I was working through some of my planning for next steps, and I was being kind of harsh with myself. I was almost like in the movies, when you see somebody slapping somebody in the face or throwing cold water on them to get their attention. I was doing some of that in my head, and some of it was appropriate to a certain level. Like, hey, get your act together here. I got to get my act together here. I got to do this over here if I want to forge ahead with this. So I've got to get my ducks in a row. But some of it was negative, and some of it was not helpful. And I'm an optimist. I wake up and my glass is half full. I'm also a pragmatist, so I try to see reality as it is. But I thought to myself, man, I'm an optimist and I'm feeling some of this resistance. What do other people feel? Like, what is it like for you? What is it like for people around you? What's it like for people around me? And and so I thought I want to do an episode just talking about that, about the struggle with um, being being hard on yourself. And I think that we obviously can't not be hard on ourselves. Meaning, if I frame it properly, uh, we can't be so easy on ourselves that we get nothing done. So there needs to be a call, an internal call to accountability, right? There needs to be an internal call to, hey, I want to do this. And as far as I know, this is what it's going to take to do this. These are the actions I need to take. I also don't know what I'm going to encounter that I'm not even aware of that I'm going to have to deal with. So you have to get your mettle ready for that. You're prepared for what you don't even know to be prepared for. And then there's a level that's the far side of that is being so hard on yourself that you get nothing done. You're just beating yourself up all day. And those are both problems, right? Because one is so soft, you get nothing done. One is so harsh, you get nothing done. Or if you do get something done in that case, it's so uncomfortable, it's so uh, hard that you can't enjoy it. I mean, even if you can grind it out and keep going, I mean, I think some people live like that. I think they do that. And I I don't know how you do that, and I don't know that you need to do that. So that's my initial thought on this concept for today. And so I guess my first question is how hard are you on yourself? How hard are you on yourself? Are you too soft? Are you too harsh? Are you somewhere right in the middle? Are you in a sweet spot right now? And if this is the first time you're hearing this concept, you may not even know whether you're being hard on yourself or not. You may think that you're being really hard on yourself and you're not getting anywhere, but you're not pushing enough. And you may be so hard on yourself, that's how you saw your family or the role models in your life work, and you're not getting anywhere because it's too hard, or you're getting somewhere but it's just painful. It's like smiling all the time, but you're gnashing your teeth, right? Keep smiling, and at some point you just want to let off the brake on that a little bit and rest because you're tired. And I think if we're doing the things that we long to do and that we may be called to do as artists, and we're able to earn, there's certainly going to be hard times, but I would say you're able to deal with the challenges because you're right where you should be, and you're doing things the way you should be, and you're enjoying them. So, how hard are you on yourself is a good question to ask. Um, the next question relates to the first. How hard should you be on yourself? And I think the answer to that is you want to be hard enough on yourself, have your expectations set to such a level and your discipline is set to such a level that you are going to get to where you want to go. So I guess that means you need to have a destination in mind, Because if you don't have a destination in mind and you're just, standing on the gas pedal, you're just going somewhere, but you don't know where you're going to go. You don't know where you're going to arrive. You're burning fuel. So I think that's an issue that I can have because I like to create things, and I'm a concept guy. A lot of my work is conceptual for clients, and I love that place because uh, it's quick, it's fun, it's the beginning of something, it's the beginning of a dream, right? The beginning of reality, in some cases for a product, the beginning of reality for a painting or an illustration, a beginning of a story. But then, after that, it becomes hard if you don't know where you're going with it. Like if it's one of my own projects, I have to have timelines set in place. I have to make commitments and put parameters around it so that it gets done, so that achievement happens. I'm so much better on a client's deadline than I am on my own deadline. So that's an area where I need to improve. And so I would say the other aspect of this is the first one, of course, being, hey, you got to be tough enough on yourself so that you're getting to where you want to go. You need to have a destination in mind for whatever it is that you're doing, and you need to be tough enough on yourself, hard enough on yourself that you see improvement in your work. You need to see improvement in your work. And I'll come back to this one a little bit later, because maybe I'll come back to it right now, because I guess I was thinking to myself, it's one thing to look at your work and critique it. It's another thing to have your family and friends look at your work and critique it, who may or may not be artists. And then it's yet another thing to have creative peers who know maybe what your destination is, or they have an inkling of what it is that you do, or a teacher who knows where you're headed and what your practice is, or a coach. Maybe you have a professional coach and they're helping you to stay accountable, and they're also being a set of eyes for you, a set of eyes that can look at your work in an objective manner outside of you. And it doesn't mean they're not your fan, but they're so much a fan of you and they want to help you that they're willing to tell you the hard things. A mentor would fall into that category. And so I guess the third question today is how hard should you allow others to be on yourself and your work? Because if you're really hard on yourself and you find somebody who's appropriately soft, it would look soft to you, right? Because you're too harsh or too hard. Maybe you need to reset your levels of harshness, hard, tough, bring it down a little bit to somewhere in the reasonable part of the world. And I think the only way to find that out is you've got to give the appropriate people, right? Coaches, teachers, people who are for you, and not for you in a way that like they'll always agree with you and always say your work is great, and they usually like to hang your work up on their refrigerator. These are people who, again, they're either peers, professional peers, really good friends who understand an aspect of your business or you, or they're teachers or they're coaches or they're mentors, okay? And if you find two who you trust and they both say, hey, you're really hard on yourself, or they might say you're not hard enough, you got to look at that. That's my rule. I have to look at it, and I have to adjust accordingly. And so when you start to figure this out, this level of how hard you should be on yourself, I think that allows you to adjust your discipline, like how disciplined you're going to be going after things, how you're going to do your work, how you're going to spend your time, how you're going to see your work and see your time. Because if you're too hard on yourself and you're setting unrealistic goals to get to where, like if you want to be as incredible as Steven Spielberg in a year and you haven't directed anything yet, it's probably an unrealistic goal, right? It's probably unrealistic. And what happens when we set unrealistic goals? Well, they disappoint us. And if they're unrealistic, chances are we're not going to learn a whole lot from them other than we don't measure up to our unrealistic goals. And if we don't see them as unrealistic, we've got a real problem. Because if we don't see them as unrealistic goals, then maybe we're not going to pursue anything more because we're going to give up because we're not good enough. I think people do that maybe far more often than we would suspect. And you see people with broken dreams. And that's a harsh treatment of yourself, right? And it can be derailing, it can be damaging. So the real challenge is to figure out the line, okay? And that's why, coaches, mentors are really good in that realm. The right ones are really good. And even counseling and therapy can be good in there too, because if you're too harsh with yourself in your work or are not harsh enough, chances are that's kind of a thread that goes through your whole life. And a therapist may see that. So I suppose for myself, where do I come in with that throughout my career and my development as far as being hard on myself and I hope I'm even framing it the right way this whole episode, because I feel like I've had to drive myself after the work that I've wanted to do. I've had to drive myself in my craft. I've had to drive myself creatively. I've had to drive myself professionally. And so that means, like, my craft aside, I've had to learn how to market, learn how to manage clients, learn how to build relationships, learn how to sell, learn how to do invoicing, sit with my accountant, know when I need to get a lawyer involved in contracts and whatnot. And I've had to be driven throughout that time. And I think it's almost got to be like if you're a runner and you're training for a marathon, and the runner, as far as I understand it, I'm not a runner, maybe I shouldn't be using this, but as far as I understand it, a runner will never run the length of their marathon in a training. Like, they run portions of it, they increase their training as they get closer, but they save the actual length of the run for the marathon. I'm pretty sure that's right. So what you're doing is you're building up a callus. You know how if you lift weights or if you work with your hands, you build calluses up on your palm. And the first few times you do it, it hurts. It hurts more the second or third or fifth time you do it, because the first time you do it, you don't even know, you're just lifting. And then because it hurts, you're growing calluses on your hands that are toughening up the skin on your palm. And then after a week or so, you don't feel it anymore because you're lifting regularly. Now, if you stop lifting and then you go back again in a couple months, you'll have to deal with it again. I think it's the same thing with guitar players. You ever meet a guitar player who plays a lot? Shake their hand and you'll feel the calluses on their fingers from the string hand, from the neck hand. And so there's resistance that makes you stronger. There's resistance that makes you tougher. So so the hardness, the discipline aspect of this is so very important because it makes us stronger. It makes us more able to come up against the challenges that we're going to face creatively, professionally, in business, in our art. And we have to have that. And it's an action, it's active. We have to go after it, right? So, but if we're too harsh, right? If we try to run the whole marathon several times before we actually run the marathon, we're going to burn ourselves out. If we try to lift our body weight every time out, we're going to be harming ourselves more than we're going to be helping. So we don't want to burn ourselves out, and we don't want to be so light, so easy with the touch and the commitment that we don't get anywhere. And man, that's a hard one. It's hard to find that middle ground. And I think, truth be told, I've been on both ends of the spectrum and in between the length of my career. I've been all over the place. There's times where I've got so much work, I'm probably harder on myself during those times because I got to get it done. And I know my wife has noticed, and I'm sure my son has, where I'm just not as present because I'm focused on getting this work done, and I'm probably stressed about it, and there are all kinds of challenges going on, and there are problems that I'm trying to solve when I'm not even working, problems that I'm thinking about. How will I do this in Adobe Illustrator? How will I layer this? How am I going to get this thing printed? How am I going to get it done on time? I don't have answers from X, Y, and Z, and I need those answers, and the deadline is growing shorter and shorter and shorter. And so I can be hard on myself in the midst of that because I'm driving myself to meet a goal. But there's only so long I can do that for. I can't do that forever. I can do it for a season, for a short season, and it gets harder the longer you do it. And then of course on the flip side of the spectrum, you get nowhere if you're not tough on yourself at all, if you don't have a discipline, right? And so discipline is a really key word in the midst of this. I know I've used it before, but discipline is forcing yourself to take action when you don't want to, when you'd rather not. It's forcing yourself to take action to get something done that wouldn't get done otherwise. And so in my career, what I realized early on was I didn't know enough about drawing. I didn't know enough about sculpting. I didn't know, and when I say I didn't know enough, I could see that my work didn't measure up to a standard that I was shooting for. So that was my goal, right? And so I worked. I drew every day. I drew every day. I drew every day. I still draw every day. I don't think there's a day that goes by where I'm not drawing something and trying to work on some pattern of drawing that I haven't done before. You know, I'm really interested in the human form right now, and I'm trying to get my head around that in ways that I haven't before. If I have reference, I'm just fine. I can work off of reference. But if I need to have a body running or turning, or the hips are turned and things are foreshortened, I want to become more familiar with that in my head. I'm not saying I don't want to use reference ever again, but I want to become more familiar with that. So I'm being hard on myself in the midst of learning about that. And I think I'm being reasonably hard on myself about it, and taking action in a disciplined manner to learn more, to always be looking and watching and learning about that particular goal that I have in mind. So I think that this is a really powerful tool to learn how to wield and to understand, because how hard we are on ourselves is largely going to impact how successful we are as creatives, and in our careers. And more isn't always the answer here, right? So if you're not hard enough, you're probably not going to get anywhere. If you're too hard on yourself, you're probably not going to get anywhere. You might for a little bit, but then you're going to burn out. So you need to be dialed in at the right level, and sometimes you got to step off the gas, and sometimes you got to step down on the pedal and go a little bit harder than you did. And you may need to do that for a season, and it may be time to rest for a season, and then most of the time it should probably be right in the middle, right? Should probably be right in the middle. So I think that this is a really it's kind of a meta episode, right? I mean, this is heady stuff, and I don't know what kind of emotions you're feeling in the midst of this, but it can be emotional too. And I would just say check all that stuff out. And if you don't have a teacher or a counselor or a mentor who can help you, seek them out and pay for them if you have to. Pay for that. Find a good one and pay. You may have to go through a few to find good ones if you're paying, but don't be afraid to pay for it, because it'll pay for itself. It'll cover its costs down the road. I believe that. I've experienced that, and I want you to succeed, and I believe you can do it if you're determined, if you're honest and pragmatic with yourself and understand where you're at, and you've set your sights on a goal that you want to attain in your creative career, in your business, that you can do it. Because we're made to do stuff. We can do things. And creative people are remarkable. Creative people are remarkable because they have something amazing in them that propels them. It's like a rocket fuel. And if we lean into that, it's going to take us amazing places. So I think that's it for today. I'm so glad that you were here with me on the Breakthrough Creative. And of course, I'm John. And I'd love to hear what you think about this episode and what I presented. And I hope it's beneficial to you. And I hope that you're always being busy about getting your career going, your creative career, and making a living off of what it is that just excites you, that just pours out of you, that makes the world a brighter place because of you and what you have added to it. Okay? All right, I'll see you next time. Cheers.